I wanted to start off this video with three questions. I feel like everybody knows about President Lincoln. He's one of the most recognizable figures in US history. I feel like even everybody knows he had a major role in ending slavery in the United States. And I think that everybody knows that he's assassinated. So my simple question is, who came next? Right? Lincoln was the 16th president, but who was the 17th president? I think a lot of people don't know the answer to this question. I think it kind of speaks volume to one of the major problems with Reconstruction, and that's why I wanted to do a really quick video on President Andrew Johnson, who was the 17th president of the United States, who came right after President Lincoln. And as we will see, he had some major faults in his character that would ultimately lead to Reconstruction not having a leader that was able to bring about the needed change in the United States. So a little bit just about Andrew Johnson. Who was he? He was actually almost the exact same age as Lincoln. He also had a very similar upbringing. The last slide showed a photograph of his home in Greenville, Tennessee. He grew up as a tailor, relatively poor, uneducated. He taught himself. He was a Tennessee Democrat who stuck with the Union. So Lincoln, of course, was a Republican at this time. Andrew Johnson was a Democrat, and he was also from Tennessee, which was one of the states that seceded from the Union. But Andrew Johnson, despite being a slave owner himself, he didn't think that the southern states should have left the Union, which was why one reason that President Lincoln selected him to be his second vice president. He was a very gifted orator. The dude could definitely give a good speech. He was a slave owner, so he did not share the conviction embraced by Lincoln later on in life that slavery was just morally wrong and it was evil. This is still not super uncommon at the time, though, too. So it wouldn't be like, oh my goodness, President Lincoln has a slave owner as his vice president. It was still common at the time to be a slave owner. His character, he was very obstinate, he was very stubborn, and he did not listen to other leaders around him. He had one particular mindset, and he was very uncompromising. So we're going to have a leader who will come after Lincoln. Lincoln was very famous for listening to his advisors in the room, acknowledging what he didn't know, encouraging debate, and then making a decision based on what he heard. But Andrew Johnson would come into most situations saying, this is what I want to do. And history will show us that he was really not the right person for the job. Um, Lincoln was truly what I call a transformational leader. He was the president who not only led the United States through the Civil War, but he was also the president who ensured passage of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery in the United States, which was passed in 1865. Lincoln would be assassinated several months later. And the problem was with Johnson is we're going to need a monumental figure to ensure that the 13th Amendment is not only upheld, but that it's also enforced, right? This idea that slavery is no longer legal. We need a president who will believe, first and foremost, that it needs to be protected. But he was, as we'll see, not up to the task. My dog just saw a squirrel. And the text also has one last kind of interesting tidbit that doesn't have anything to do with Reconstruction. But in 1867, Secretary of State William Seward, we saw him a lot in his role with President Lincoln during the Civil War, orchestrated a purchase of a piece of land of $7.2 million, which was about 2 cents an acre. This would, of course, later end up being Alaska. It was purchased from Russia at the time. Everybody thought it was a worthless purchase. There's political cartoons. People were calling it Seward's Folly, saying that there's nothing up there in Alaska. It's just a bunch of ice. So they show him soliciting votes from a polar bear. It's kind of silly. But later on, as we will see, this can be comparable to the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 for the impact that it later had. It enlarged the United States, as we saw, and gold was discovered in the Klondike in 1896. So this is happening several years after the Civil War. Secretary of State William Seward helps orchestrate the purchase of Alaska from Russia for about 2 cents an acre.